Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. Michael J. Allen, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hi, I'm Michael J. Allen, Star-Lord, professional goofball, and USA Today best-selling author of science fiction and fantasy.
Nice. And all of that will buy you a Coke if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Book sales, the profits aren't what they used to be with all this digital overhead. But, you know, what we really ought to do is just get into bank robbing. I hear that's where the money is. The banks, I mean.
Well, yeah, but also the three squares.
Oh, this is true. Nick won't arrest us, right? You'll let us go, right? We'll just ride off into the sunset. Oh, wait, you can't answer that because you're a federal agent. That might be considered incriminating. Never mind. We'll just pretend I didn't ask. All right. So the next part of the introduction, dear listener, first off, Mr. FBI listening, we were joking, clearly. We might write a book about it, but we won't really do it. I'm too pretty for prison. And with that, the next part of the introduction is how we first found them. So Michael's been a fan of the show and friend of the show for so long. I don't remember. I think we started talking to you about books back when we were still the Sci-Fi Shenanigans. So it's been a hot minute.
It's possible. It's been a long time. I don't bother you guys too much, but I certainly do enjoy it.
Yeah, but we see your books pop around, and I know you're a busy dude too. But since the last time you came here, we've changed up the religion questions a little bit, and I went through all of your previous episodes, and never once have you answered the original religion question. So we're gonna correct that error, and we're gonna get started. Are you ready for this, Michael?
I am ready. All
right, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
All of the above.
Okay, we'll allow it. A Trinitarian. Is there anything off the list?
It's a pantheon, right? Yeah.
I'll allow it. Pantheon's a good word. Is there anything besides the list of sci-fi properties that you really dig?
Oh, shoot. Farscape, Babylon 5, Andromeda. Did I miss any?
I was thinking you might list the game you started writing books in. What was it? What was that called?
Starflight?
Starflight. There we go.
Well, yeah, but Starflight was a game, so I thought we were talking about either shows or books.
All of the above. It's a spec fic. It counts. We don't discriminate. That's why we picked the list we did, because they're across the mediums.
Oh, that's fair. So, yeah, definitely Starflight as well.
So Nick, he got to write in Starflight, which was one of his favorite games back when he was a youngin'. So I imagine you can understand because you got to draw trading cards for Marvel. So it's kind of the same thing for you, right?
Yeah, you get to play in somebody else's sandbox, which is always cool, especially when you're a fan.
No. Yeah, that's what I mean. Something you grew up reading and then get to play in it. I think that makes it even cooler.
Oh yeah, that's a cool factor of like plus infinity.
When that finally comes out, Nick, we've got to talk about it. So you're going to do an episode just about that, right? I know back in production on the trad side is long and slow, but I'm just saying, don't let us forget.
Oh yeah, these cards ain't even coming out till like 2026 or something like that. That's how far in advance they do this.
Crazy, and I'm not that patient, which is why I did go indie. But all right, because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
Oh, none of them. Ugh.
Okay. What would you substitute it with?
So we're going with fantasy.
Yeah.
True fantasy. The Half-Blood Chronicles, Andre Norton, Mercedes Lackey.
Okay. I don't think I've read those. I'm guessing you recommend them.
I do. I'm still bugging Misty every time I see her about the lost book that was written right before Andre died and has been sitting in probate forever.
Who else wrote it with Andre Norton?
Mercedes Lackey.
Okay. I've read some of her work. I think I've read Norton too, but it's been so long. Although Nick and I, for our podcast, we do the retro reviews. We've been going to some of the classics books and the classic spec fic movies. So,
well, you want to go with guilty fantasy pleasures beyond Schwarzenegger's Conan or Red Sonja, really? Go with Hawk the Slayer. Talk about B-list fantasy.
Okay. You said Conan.
Well, Conan and Red Sonja, which is basically the same story. They've got Schwarzenegger in them being big and brutal. But for an old movie, and it's actually on Amazon Prime, Hawk the Slayer. Talk about a D&D on movie screen.
I'm going to have to check that out because I don't think I've even heard of that one. Have you seen it, Nick?
Which movie?
Hawk the Slayer.
Hawk the Slayer.
I don't think I have. It's on Amazon, though, so I'll probably go give it a watch.
It even got a mention in Ready Player One. So the book.
Hawk the Slayer.
All right. I am highlighting that to go back to, and it might go on our retro movie review list. All right. So one of the crying shames of growing up and becoming an adult is they stop asking you this very important question. So we're bringing it back because growing up's a trap. So, Michael, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Stegosaurus.
That is a very popular dinosaur. I'm curious why. I bet there's a reason somewhere in there.
It's the dinosaur version of a knight. Shield
Go on.
and sword. Well, Stegosaurus's back is lined with defensive plates, and it has a spiked tail. So, okay, shield and mace, but it's basically a dinosaur knight.
You know, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, but that tracks. Will you allow it, Nick? Call the ball in the field.
I'll allow it. Call the ball.
All right, and finally, because we are civilized human beings here at the Blast and Blades podcast, we are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Coffee. Blonde and sweet with a bunch of carbon dust from a motor generator on a submarine.
Okay. Were you a submariner in your earlier days?
I was. That's where I learned to drink coffee.
Okay. So you
Which
want
is
your
why
coffee
the carbon dust is a requirement.
and strong enough to hold your spoon up for you?
Screwdriver, but yeah.
That sounds like how Nick drinks his bourbon. He just stirs it with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Because, hepatitis, whatever. All right. So before we dive into the Kickstarter that brought us here, then let's talk about that Navy service. Do you feel like your time in the Navy has affected the way you tell stories?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the submarine is basically a spaceship in water. So you've got the confined spaces, the isolation, the long periods of time without sunlight. Then you've got the people that were on it, very few of which were what anybody would call normal. We had a guy on the submarine that basically locked and loaded against the XO on something and then walked around the ship while we were still at sea every day saying what he was based upon the number of days he had until he got off the boat and went to prison.
Wow.
Oh.
So crazy to be had.
And they didn't just lock him up and leave him?
There wasn't any place to lock him up on a fast attack submarine with an extra 60 shipyard workers on board. We were way over the spec limit.
How do you keep everyone safe with a crazy man like that walking around? That's the real important question.
Somebody walks around behind him.
Okay. Also locked and loaded, I take it? Well, no, you wouldn't want to shoot inside a submarine. That might be bad.
Right. Physical, not firearm.
Yeah.
Baton. Big, burly, and batons.
Do they use those in law enforcement anymore, Nick, or do they get phased out?
Yeah, we have the collapsible steel baton. So it's like Demolition Man, but it doesn't shock you. Got another tool.
You need to work on that. Get like a cattle prod.
If I was an engineer, man, I would come up with something like that. But the little.
I'm nearly as old as the Stegosaurus, so they just had good old fashioned, police sticks, police baton.
Yeah.
The one
the
that
old
looked like a high-tech Tonfa.
So did you ever, when you write, do you ever draw on people you knew when you were in the Navy?
Oh yeah. Of course, the Navy's not the limit though. But yeah.
What do you mean the Navy's not the limit?
Of the people I draw upon.
Oh, right, absolutely.
There's lots of crazy to be had.
I mean, we all know our share of crazies for sure.
Yeah.
Do they always know they're being used?
There's a Navy joke in there that I'm going to skip around.
I didn't mean it, but I'll take it.
No, for the most part, I haven't seen or talked to any of them in, 30 years? So at this point, they either recognize themselves or they don't.
And what, if I'm remembering correctly, the subs are the silent service. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, I've heard them called that.
I know I watched it. Go ahead.
You can't tell that by watching down Periscope, though.
That is a hilarious movie, though. Did you see that one, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
I like that he played golf off the top of the sub.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because if I had a sub, why wouldn't you do that, right?
Why wouldn't you? Absolutely.
So when you serve, because you write sci-fi, and I have heard people say that there is a strong comparison between life on a sub and life on a spaceship. Do you draw on that experience specifically to get the vibe of the spaceships?
I do. I actually went into the Navy and the subservice with the intention of branching over into NASA. It didn't happen because I was young and stupid. But so, yeah, there's definitely a parallel, particularly in small craft settings. Obviously, if you're flying something the equivalent of a space aircraft carrier, it's not like it's all tiny and isolated, and that's a city. That's a battle star.
I know Terry Mixon has written, it's called Warfish, which is based off a submarine incident that happened during World War II, and then he basically rejiggered it and set it in space. But that was the whole idea. But instead of having to go up Periscope to see above the water, he had some sort of like slip space that was sort of between realities kind of thing, so you could get the sub effect. But I mean, it worked really well to put that nautical scene in space. I wish he'd turned that into a series, but it didn't make him enough money. Damn capitalists.
Well, we have our moments where we have to give up the thing we love for the thing we can sell.
Absolutely.
At least I think that when I find the thing that sells, I'll let you know.
Now, obviously, like, your time in uniform affects the way you tell stories. Do you think it affects the way you engage with content as a consumer?
It definitely does if I'm looking at a submarine.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure everybody has the same problem. Military that doesn't act like military, tech that isn't real tech or is so blatantly wrong that, nobody did any research. Fires in enclosed space, oxygen limitations, battery versus engine, all the same stuff that I would know just from a submarine.
That makes sense. So, all right, we brought you here to talk. I mean, you've been on the show like 3 or 4 times, so obviously if people want to go check those out, where you give your whole nerd pedigree, I don't feel like we need to revisit that every time because it'd get a little boring if they've been following along the whole time. So we'll keep it simple. Obviously, you've been a reader, a consumer of content all your life. When did you decide you wanted to give writing a chance?
The first time I wrote a book was New Year's Eve 1991. I've already given that story, so I'm not going to go into the details of it. Big picture, about 10 years later or so, I went back to it and started making mistakes for another 10 years. And then I got serious somewhere around 2010.
Okay. Was there any one sort of defining moment that made you come back in the 2010s and say, hey, like, let's do this for real?
They say the first million words are practice. They're right. It was after I got past my million words where the stories got better, the plots got deeper, the characters got more real, that I think we both the writing and me, just got better and more serious about telling good stories.
Nick, you've heard that expression, I'm sure. Does that apply to comics? I'm just curious.
What's that?
The 1,000 hours in writing, they say like the first million words.
Oh yeah, it's it's just equates to the most time spent doing something particularly. I mean, I heard a lot in special operations. You know, we did 2,000 hours. 2,000 hours spent on a particular task meant you were skilled at it. Yeah, but it's the same in comics, same in any type of creative endeavor. I mean, hell, gunplay is a creative endeavor too. So, yeah, the more time spent doing something, the better you're going to be at it.
But there's a threshold. You find a point where suddenly you understand your tools better than you did the day before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a lot better.
All right, I'm going to show this image, which is, if you're listening at home and you're not watching, it is the screen grab for what you'll look at if you go to the Dumpstermancer Kickstarter, which is what this episode is about. It is live as we record. When this airs, it'll have 6 days left before it closes. It has been backed. It looks like it has been funded. So now you are not there's not as much risk factor for you, but you can still back a project that sounds pretty cool. So where did the concept of the Dumpstermancer come from?
The Dumpstermancer was a combination of things. First off, I was homeless as a teen, so I have a lot of insights about living on the streets. I was watching a movie with Paul Hogan called Almost an Angel, where at one point he is driving past and under an overpass where the underpass is littered with homeless, and he's been in prison all this time, so he doesn't know about this. Just previously to this situation, he was shot at in a bank robbery, no relation to the one we were talking about earlier, and thought he came back as an angel. So he's reading the Bible for the first time and reads the article on loaves and fishes, and then decides to go knock over basically a Captain D's and feed to people that are homeless. That, as well as my own experiences, and of course the way that writers work, which is ideas flit in from here and there and eventually locked together into a 3D puzzle, gave me the idea of, well, what would you have if you had a wizard that was homeless, and not only homeless but couldn't just use magic the normal way, had to do it a different way because of situations, which brought me to a homeless ex-con who's forced to create magic out of the trash to save the city from the bastards that framed him.
Okay, I like the concept of dumpster magic because I've never seen that before.
I do love to twist and push at the edges. I'm not so good about being in the direct mainstream line, but I'm good at making new creatures, like redesigning the brownies into little cousin its that spin around like a car wash brush to do their cleaning. I just love to twist stuff up.
All of your ideas have intrigued me, so I mean, I'm done. I'm down. All right, so that's the concept for the Dumpstermancer. Well, you know what? Let me show the video and that you did for your thing, and then we'll go from there, just so people can see it.
Okay.
Good moment. I'm Michael J. Allen, and this is Decoy, the third Dumpstermancer series book. Dumpstermancer is a very personal project to me and always has been, owing to the fact that I myself was homeless when I was much younger. It's about a homeless ex-con who's forced to create magic out of trash to save the city from the bastards that framed him. The main character was a leading archaeologist developing magic to help first responders and people in trauma care, and yet his partners betrayed him and sent him off to prison. And now he can't even buy the components for magic spells that he designed. What you might be asking why I'm here on Kickstarter to do this project. And really, it's a celebration. I am coming back to the publishing world after a couple of years of going blind and learning how to deal with all that. And bringing Dumpstermancer and Decoy to finish up the first arc of the overall story has been a real dream for me. And I'm hoping you guys enjoy it. Thanks.
So I do really, really dig your art for your covers.
Thanks.
Those are cool.
Who do you have managing that for you in the background now that you can't see them yourself?
Managing it, I have a cover review channel in my Discord server where various aspiring or professional authors, friends of mine, super fans, people that have kind of learned about covers from me over the last few years are now kind of answering my questions. Obviously, my seeing eye daughter is a big help when she wants to be.
You should get that on a t-shirt for her.
What was that?
You should get that on a t-shirt for her, seeing eye daughter.
Obviously, she did not tell me that my Kickstarter video had so much con noise in the background. Sitting here thinking, oh, I need to re-record that.
I actually think it makes it more, I don't know, personal. You find like you're standing there in the crowd with you.
Okay.
So
it just got really loud there, or background got really loud.
So obviously, like you said, this is the first arc. Where do you see the entire scope of this series going? Like, is it going to be 6 books, 9 books?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 10.
Okay.
It might go up to 12, I suppose, but I don't think so. The Dumpstermancer is basically follows Elias through the 5 stages of grief.
Okay.
Recovering from that betrayal and being sent to a virtual prison for 100 years.
Wait, virtual prison for 100 years?
100 virtual years. Yeah, he basically got jacked into the Matrix for a little less than a decade, which amounted to 100 years of being in Mad Max, for lack of a better term.
Oof.
That's,
sounds horrible.
Yeah, that actually sounds almost like cruel and unusual, you would think.
It really is. I mean, he's completely traumatized when the book starts. All he wants is to be left alone. And of course, that's not how things work in a book. You know,
no, never.
He plants himself in an alley that happens to be inhabited by fairy rodents that demand his help, and he's got people out to kill him for the crime that he's, convicted of having done. Not that he actually did it, but.
So obviously, when you do Kickstarters, you obviously get the various packages that you can purchase. So presumably, they can get ebook or print. Yes.
Yeah.
Is there plans for audio?
Well, there is. One of the main goals behind running this Kickstarter was to raise enough to rehire the narrator from books 1 and 2. We are funded, but we're a long way from getting to that point. Unfortunately, my narrator got very popular, which means his prices went up. But that's good for him. I mean, I'm happy for him. It just means raising more. But with the whole going blind thing and all the money I spent on surgeries, and then the job kicked me to the curb when I didn't get any sight back. So I'm trying to rise out of the going blind part and no longer being depressed or dealing with that kick to the teeth, that losing the ability to do pretty much everything you love, and come back strong with a new launch and a new way to launch. Decoy is not the last one I'm going to be launching. I have been writing the background. I showed off 5 new books at the convention that the video was filmed at. So there's a lot to come. And this is my first attempt at Kickstarter.
Okay.
And again, it's me coming back. So it's a milestone. It's a celebration.
So obviously they can get the ebook in the print. Presumably, well, obviously they're going to need to hit funding stretch goals to get the audiobook. What are the perks that they can get when they participate? Is it literally just straight up you buy you pay the level to get physical and or ebook, or are there stretch goals where you can get some of your back catalog or anything like that?
Well, so we've got ebook, paperback, and hardback, and those cover the digital and the physical tiers. We've got a bunch of merchandise too, which I hope people want, and if they don't want, that's fine. We've got reward tiers up, down, left, and sideways at this point. I think I overdid it ultimately. We've got one tier for tuckerization, which I think has 2 tucks left. The add-on list has everything in my back list, including some out-of-print stuff. There's even one super mega pack that we broke Kickstarter with that had like 87 individualized items that also included the first edition books of the Bittergate Dragon Revolution and the the Scion series, where I did the original art myself before I got smart enough to stop doing that. So everything is in there as an add-on. You want to buy a $1 wallpaper and go cherry pick what you want. I'm absolutely fine with that. But of course, the reward tiers are where stretch goals get a little bit more engaged. We haven't shown our full hand yet of either the weekly bonus goals or bonus rewards, or the stretch goals or the instant goals that we're going to be playing with. We've only got the first two up right now. That's 25 backers for everybody gets thanked on paper. And then I think at the $1,000 funding level is where we roll out the Read with a Friend perk. That means that either the ebooks or the ebook cards that are on the reward tier get double. Well, you get one added on, because if you were an early bird, you got double already. So you buy an ebook after we hit that stretch goal, and you get 2 copies of Decoy, as an example. And then you and your buddy can read it together and talk about it while you're reading and share. I mean, that's what readers do. That's what we love. So
yeah.
I wanted to make that possible, so I invented the Read with a Perk Friend. I don't know if anybody's ever done it on Kickstarter. I don't know if anybody wants it. There are more behind it. I just haven't showed them on. Not to mention,
that is an interesting.
Bring in
I don't think I've ever heard of that one either, but I like the concept.
So we have our normal ebooks, and then we have our ebook cards, which may or may not be visible to you easily, which are basically just a cover, a description.
Can you flip it back around?
Yep.
Okay, so it's book plates.
They are basically book plates. They're keepsakes. I've got some jelly jam labels that'll come off relatively easy that I can put on an autograph if somebody wants an autographed ebook card. But they're a physical keepsake to go along with the ebook. I mean, we're dealing with a physical tier, people interested in the physical tiers. I didn't want to make them deal with digital per se, so I made a physical way to do it.
So is there a tier where they can get, if they haven't read Decoy, and I think you said book 2 is Duplicity?
Yep.
Is there a way they can get those as part of the deal, so they just get all 3 at once if they haven't read any of them yet?
Yep. Every tier has either a trio, an ebook trio, a paperback trio, or a hardback trio.
Is there an option to get like ebook, trio, and either hardback or paperback?
So the physical trios, or all the physical tiers, come with their books on book plate card as well as physical. So You're good there. And there are a couple tiers that are hybridized paperback and hardback and ebook.
Cool.
As well as, all the other stuff that you get on Kickstarter.
So we got a little bit of the concept of the universe, but where did you specifically come up with Dumpstermancer? Because I don't know that I'm thinking of that on my own.
So for the longest time, the series was earmarked as Trash Mage, because that's what he is.
That's a good title too, though.
It's not bad. It's not bad, but for some reason I was headed back from, I think it was Chattacon or LibertyCon up in Chattanooga, and suddenly the word Dumpstermancer just appeared in my head. And I tossed it around. I did a trademark search. I did a URL search, and went, okay, this is it. This is the lovely thing. I bought the URL, and I didn't trademark it yet, but I will eventually. But yeah, it just plopped in as a replacement, and I've had readers have kind of twisted it up themselves, and he does Dumpstermancer, and I'm like, well, okay, yeah, guess that's appropriate too. And I found so many readers that just immediately responded to the word Dumpstermancer.
I mean, it caught my attention, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I don't know. The cool thing is everybody who's an author wants their books at some point in movie or comic or graphic novel or all the other mediums, partly because we all just want to get paid. We're horrible capitalists that way. And partly because it would be cool to see someone take your ideas and kind of visualize them in a tangible way you can look at.
Yeah.
This is one of the few where I'm looking at this and I'm like, if this was a comic, I'd actually read it. Because the idea is so cool sounding. Like I don't say that lightly. I've only read a couple in my lifetime.
I've interacted with a number of comic developers. I don't mean companies. I mean actual, indie comists. What is the appropriate term for somebody who's a comic creator instead of a book writer? Sound like Nick would know.
Artists, maybe.
Okay, could be just artists.
Yeah. Artist, comic book creator.
You need your own word, Nick. Trademark it when you find it.
I like to call myself a world builder.
That's fair. But we've talked about doing either a short run comic or graphic novel with it. But just so far, all the projects have fallen to the wayside. So, there's that whole going blind thing that kind of messed me up.
Yeah, and comics aren't a cheap endeavor to get into. I mean, when Nick told me what it costs to produce one, and that's when he does his own art and he doesn't have to hire that out, and then it doubles if he actually has to pay an artist. Holy crap. I could write and edit fully 2 books for that price, for one small comic book. And Nick is a professional. He won't use AI, so, it's like, hand-drawn, takes him a while. You got to embrace the tech revolution and sell your soul for money. That's all you got to do, Nick.
I sold my soul for the talent to draw these things, so I don't know if I have much soul to sell.
That works.
Fair. That's fair.
So if you did get, and obviously, we were relying on your pre-blindness days, but if this became a graphic novel or a comic book, would you want it to go grayscale or would you like it full color?
It would have to be full colored because of the magic system.
Okay. And why is that? What about the magic system would require that?
So anybody who's got the books, or at least the more recent ones, knows that there's an appendix in the back of it, which is the basics of arcanology. The very basic level is an integration of magical circle types, which are basically, for lack of a better term, force field polyhedrons. Not all of them are actually force fields, but each resonance of magic has different elements to it, different colors, different scents, different textures, different effects. The 5th res is the most common that gets used. It's a milky white. I'm pretty sure that's the one that smells like burnt popcorn, and it's a physical barrier. It can become at magnitude 5. It can be thick enough so that air can't get in and out. At lower magnitudes, you can still breathe through the barrier, but most things can't get through it. But only physical things. There's I think the 4th resonance is basically an ectoplasmic barrier. I know that 6 and 7 block energy types, heat, electricity, etc. 1 and 2 block magic. And like I said, they're all different colors. So since they're different colors and different shapes, and the shapes are not per res, they're what you're doing with it, you'd really need the colors to know what was going on. Because I don't imagine a comic's going to stop and say, well, that's a fifth third resonance rhombus. Especially since they can be layered, the colors and the resonances.
Okay, that makes sense. I could see how that would be complicated to do in black scale or grayscale, I guess. Yeah. So if you were going to get one colored, would you go for a grim dark look, or would you want it bright and vibrant?
This series is close enough to grim dark that I'd want to go that way.
Yeah, it gives when I was reading through your description, it gave me a little bit of a noir vibe that I liked.
It does have that feel, especially in the first couple books, or the first arc, if you want to look at it that way. Of course, we're introducing the world. We're introducing Eli, who's just come out of 100 years in Mad Max. So It's a pretty dark and angry place when we start.
Have you seen Demolition Man?
Of course.
That is the vibe
Absolutely.
your prison's description gave me.
And that actually is a good match if we could swap out the tech for magic.
Yeah. And obviously the other part of that is, in theory, with the Demolition Man, they were supposed to be unconscious and not aware of everything as they're being reprogrammed. Whereas this one, they intentionally wanted them awake and suffering.
Oof.
Yes.
So now, if stuff happened to them in prison in the form of like in the VR, do the injuries translate when they wake up, or is it just
No? Nope. They can die and be respawned and restart. When they do die, they lose any of the bodybuilding that they've done, just exercising and endurance. Eli runs into that problem when he gets back out because he feels like he's all buffed up and able to fight. And the reality is his body's been wasting away for almost a decade. Even with minor muscle stimulation, he's still nowhere near the big bad guy he was during some of his period in the wasteland.
Sometimes as veterans, we get that when we look in the mirror and you're like, holy shit, who's that old guy staring back at me? And where's that 22-year-old I still see in my head? So
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. Who's this guy with all the gray in his beard now?
Right. So go ahead.
And the concept was related to exactly that. What happened to the kid that came out of boot camp, all muscle spit and vinegar?
You got old and fat, like me.
So the magic in this world, is it hidden magic, or does everybody know about the magic?
So Dumpstermancer is a second world magic system that pretends to be open world. Magic is actually accessible at your basically at the equivalent of your corner coffee shop. You can go and buy a spell to find your keys or color your hair, or in the case of the first book, completely retransform you into an elven beauty permanently. Well, not permanently, because the Eli's old partners put a timer on it, so you have to keep re-upping your subscription to be beautiful. Greed being that kind of thing. But there's a whole other world. To go into a little bit of lore that's in the not yet released to public World Bible. We're building it, but it takes a long time, especially blind, to build the world. We got a world anvil site that we've been building. In the Industrial Revolution, the Fae decided to cast one super ritual that split Earth into basically conjoined twins, separated by a thin membrane of silver magic. So there's our Earth, and then there's the realm beyond the silver. Originally, when the split happened, there was no magic left in the world, and there were no Fae. Well, that's not exactly true. There are some exceptions. But the magic started creeping back into the world. People started learning how to use it again. In the middle 1900s, magic started becoming more well known, became public. People started going to college for degrees in archaeology, like Eli did. Though most of it was more theory and use it at home than it was build an entire corporation around providing, first responders, military units, magical solutions to problems that tech couldn't quite tackle.
Okay.
Eli's a big stickler, like Nick is. He does not believe magic should just be willy-nilly and find your keys. He thinks it needs to be, used for what's important and what tech can't,
like a greater
do.
Purpose type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. His partner just wanted to get rich, though, so that's the way that one went.
I can relate.
Going into business with the wrong people can ruin lives.
Well, 3 college friends, his best friend and his fiance, and then one of them does something, and I'm not going to talk about it.
So wait. So it wasn't just his business partner; it was his best friend and his fiance that betrayed him.
Yep.
That kicks it up a notch.
Oh, that's a double stab. That hurts twice as much.
Next, you're going to tell me to make it even worse. The fiance got with his friend while he was in jail.
Of course she did.
Ooh, that's very Count to Monte Cristo.
So, do we get revenge?
Oh,
Like, do we get to see justice happen to these people? Like, punch them in the face or something cool?
Well, we're only 3 books in, so obviously with 10 books,
Okay.
it's not perfect, and because it's patterned after the 5 stages of grief recovery, there are the stages like negotiation, where we may see Eli trying to make up with people. We're in anger right now, having finished the first arc, so there's some brutal stuff. There's one of those people is maimed by a third party, and Eli has the ability to fix it and won't.
Why did you use as a dividing line the stages of grief?
Really, because the kind of betrayal I built requires that kind of slow recovery, and the emotional impact of the 5 stages of grief really makes for a great long-term blueprint for the overall story. But I've had my own betrayals. I spent time on the streets homeless. I grew up with a lot of denial and a lot of anger as I got over things, and it's all personal to me. It's not me. Eli's nowhere near me. And
Yeah, you're totally cooler than that.
What?
You're totally cooler than that.
I hope so. I've learned the hard lesson, though, that Eli has to learn, ironically enough, in asking for or accepting help, now that there are a lot of things that I'm having trouble doing. And Eli's not quite learned that yet. We're getting there.
All right, before I keep gabbing, Nick, you had a question you flagged me down in the side chat with?
Yeah. Michael, if you could live in this world, would you? That you've created?
Can I stay away from Eli and still live in the world?
So with plot armor, you would.
However you want to run the gauntlet, my friend.
Yeah, this one's not bad. As worlds go, this is actually a pretty good one. I've certainly written some worse ones.
So if Eli meets you in a back alley and he knows that you are the creator of his torment, the god of his world, how do you see that interaction playing out?
Well, it would have been better before the 3rd book when I finally gave him an attack spell. Now I'm toast. Well, maybe not. I'd still end up bloodied and unhappy, but Eli might be a little bit more forgiving by 3rd book.
So
all my characters would beat the living shit out of me.
Yeah, I can see that.
For
and
the
they
most
would,
part.
yeah, I can see that, Nick, because you're not very nice to your characters.
Oh, I
And
beat the hell out of them.
Your tagline should be "No one promised you a happy ending."
Actually, that's not bad. I think I'm going to use that.
So
Nobody promised you a
Michael,
happy ending.
what do you use as the basis of your magic system? I mean, obviously you describe how it works, but were you inspired by like a specific RPG, a specific book, or did you just sort of figure it out as you went along?
So the magic system is kind of a 2-tier system. There's the very basics of the spell resonance fields, the circles, the magnitudes, how they can be layered. That one is pretty much me looking at Dresden and some of the others and how they use circles and going, why do they only work this way and why don't they work a little more 3-dimensionally? Why do they have to be an exact circle? Why can't they just be a closed circuit? Why do you have this but not that? Why can one circle do all of these things, but you don't have to do anything particularly fancy about it? I mean, Eli's circles can be just drawn as circles and can be will-based, but he can also mark them with formulae of different resonances, different magnitudes, different effects. I created a magical 3D food printer for him with one of the resonances, the way he's using it. It just seemed like the circle concept was just not tapped as deeply as it needed to be. And again, I love to twist myths and magics. So that first part was, what can I do with a guy who sciences his magic, who's basically a lab not a lab rat, but a lab researcher. and build him a magic system that he can use with basically no components. And then we added onto it the secondary field, which is mostly thaumaturgic style magic, where the elements involved are related to what you're doing. For example, he dredges up rancid noodles from the dumpster of a Mongolian Italian fusion called Genghis cannolis, and uses it to make the equivalent of a Dungeons and Dragons grease spell that he calls Slip and Slide. But because he's a research magician, he iterates it. It's for his first casting of it, dropped basically a 2-ton gelatinous cube of KY on his head. Because he got all the ratios wrong. At one point, he combines dandelion root, blackberry vine, both of which are very pervasive, with calamari, and ends up with a squid root rooting spell of green and growing tough rooting tentacles. He's got other magics. Some are rune based. Eli, one of the things I haven't mentioned about Eli is prior to going to prison, his company sent him all over the world digging spells out from ruins and other places. And it was actually an Incan spell that got him really betrayed, or it was used to really betray him.
So when they do this magic, is there a special magical language that you use? I know a lot of authors tend to revert to Latin because it's familiar, but it's still foreign. So it kind of gives you that feel. Did you do something like that?
Definitely not for Eli. I don't remember any invocations that are actually spoken. The Fae have their own magic. They have that has its own scents and textures and colors. Eli's a little special though. Like I said, he sciences his magic. He's pretty well convinced that magic is a science. It's just a science few people understand, which is why it's arcanology. It is a technology of its own. But in book 3, we introduced him to an old hand magus from before the colleges really started. And they're having an argument about the rules versus the flow. It has to be this, the measurements have to be that. From Eli's point of view, and the guy is like, I just did it.
Okay.
So it's actually a more flexible system than Eli thinks it is, but he's got his bias. Just like Alton Brown that uses science to teach cooking, Eli uses science for magic. He's the Alton Brown of magic.
Okay. Was there anything we didn't talk about? And we are butting up on time because we're trying to really hard to stay on the hour because we've been told by our listeners they don't like it when I go super long. But was there anything we didn't talk about this universe that you think people really ought to know?
The one thing about Decoy that is different from its predecessors, well, let me sidestep. The series itself, when I designed it after the show script pattern for Burn Notice. So, as with Burn Notice, there's the big Burn Notice quest, and there's the every episode, somebody needs your help, Michael. And each one of these books starts with a Columbo-style cold open that is third person, and then we go into basically an episode of Burn Notice where the book is the somebody needs your help, where the overarching he wants to get his name cleared, just like Michael Weston from Burn Notice.
That was a great show. I missed that show so much.
I just love the show. I can watch it over and over again, and to me, that's a storytelling magic that I wanted to dissect and figure out how to use so that I could do the same thing. Make books that people could read over and over again.
I used a lot of that in my Phantom Hawk series, Michael Weston's narration.
Yeah,
I love that aspect of the show.
I absolutely agree. I didn't use it for Eli because I wasn't sure how to use it, because he was already kind of a grumpy nihilist when we first start out, having come from what he came from. But no, I love the narration for Burnouts.
Yeah.
I actually like Covert Affairs, especially Augie, who I always thought was cool. And now that I'm blind, I know he's cooler than I thought he was. But Covert Affairs doesn't have the narration that Weston gives us. The thing I was saying before, though, before I forget, is the one thing that makes Decoy a little bit different than its pairs is it's kind of like the Sam Axe standalone movie in that it has a second first person character now, a new lead character. On the Kickstarter, you can see a basic character description for AJ Stone. But the secret behind AJ Stone is that he's a spinoff. He's the lead for Dumpstermancer Guardian, which is planned but not yet executed.
Okay. So if people, obviously we're going to link to the Kickstarter in the show notes, but if people wanted to follow you, and obviously all of yours are in the show notes as well, so you don't have to try to list them all, but if people want to follow you, where is the best place for them to track you down?
The best place is my Discord server.
Okay.
Discord is a little anti-accessibility, and I'm having trouble with my screen readers, but I pay attention to it better than anything else because it's the least hard to deal with blind. For the most part, I mean, because obviously you can chat in the channels or you can PM me directly, and I'm there a lot of the time. I've got a Scribbler's Desk audio channel where I go and write, and people can just jump in and or have a chit chat with me while I'm working, or watch what I'm working on when I'm there.
Do you narrate now?
I've stopped being able to read out loud. And I don't know how I would narrate. Well, I guess I could read what I'm writing, but the problem with that is
no. I meant dictate. I'm sorry. I meant dictate for how you write them, or do you still type it on a keyboard?
I'm still typing. So I use a screen reader. That means a massive amount of noise in my life, way more than I can really handle anymore. Because it tells me the letter as I type it. So that's going on. So doing that with it being in the audio channel, if somebody's there, generally means I have to stop typing. I don't have to. I can turn the screen reader off. What's really changed with the blind writing is the editing. Editing with a screen reader is like 5 times slower than any kind of editing you've ever done in your life. I have to tell it to read me the page, or get down with Alt, Shift, or Control keys and arrow keys and move it to another paragraph and let it read the paragraph. If I found a mistake, then I've got to find out which line it is by going line by line. Then I got to find which word it is that's got the problem. Then I got to go letter by letter to figure out whether or not it's the screen reader saying it wrong, or if there really is a spelling mistake. So that and revising and reworking paragraphs and sentences, there are a lot more typos. There are absolutely a lot more typos. One of the worst problems I've got, and it taught me a new Microsoft control I didn't know about, is I'll get my hand off the home squares just a little bit, and then I'll find out that I have 2 pages of gobbledygook because I was 1 character over on the keyboard. And then I got to figure out which character shift it was and go back and re-engineer all of them. That problem is combined with having the caps lock on by accident if my left hand shifted 1.
You need minions.
But there is what?
You need minions.
I have a seeing eye daughter, but obviously she's an adult. She has her own life. I did learn that there's, I think it's Alt F3 if I remember right. So what you select all these paragraphs and hit Alt F3, and it gets rid of the caps and puts them to basic capitalization for sentence structure.
Nice.
That's not perfect because obviously names and whatnot, proper nouns, are a problem. But I didn't even know that was an option until I had to go looking for it.
I didn't either. All right. I forgot to ask before we wrap this up. Is this first or third person?
It is third person cold open with first person throughout the rest of the book.
Okay. And I'm assuming Elias is the POV?
Eli is first person POV. For Decoy, also AJ. I think Decoy was also the first book that ever had a third person POV scene. outside the cold open.
All right. And are you wide, or does this go into Kindle Unlimited?
I am wide.
Outstanding. I'm trying to get away from the Amazon exclusive where I can, just because, writing's on the wall there.
Well,
Right.
I grew up poor. I mean, obviously, I was homeless as in my teens, and if it wasn't for libraries, I wouldn't have learned to be a reader. So, okay, maybe I'm not making Amazon pay you money, but I'm available to people that don't have the money, and that means more to me.
And I appreciate that you're paying it forward. So this is the part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your minds on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part. You can review it on any of the platforms you buy it. And I happen to believe, now, Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Can you leave reviews on Kickstarter?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you can.
Okay. So, and if you don't have the those places and you want to review it, make a website and review the books there, but share the word. It really does help. And it tells the algorithms, if you like this, then you'll like that, to pair the book with other readers who might not organically discover the novel. So do your part, help us out. He'll greatly appreciate it. And you can find us on our Linktree at linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we linked all the things: the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, the Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email the show at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Or more importantly, you can reach Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and the emails. She wants all the shenanigans, so reach out, do your part, keep her entertained. We have our website also linked on the link tree. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, but it is a Spotify website. And if you go there for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. Every penny helps. These episodes are not free to produce, and we appreciate your patronage. You can support the show more directly over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-host duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of his mustache. And I'd say her mustache, but then Stabby might kill you and then me. Because ladies don't like it.
I'll definitely get it first. That's for sure.
Not that she has one. I'm just saying the joke doesn't work because she gets mad and Stabby.
Yeah, and I'm like within close proximity, man. Like, I got enough puncture wounds. I don't need another one.
Speaking of supporting the show, you can also support the show by using the link in the show notes for that coffee brand coffee. It's made in America, roasted in America, not just another drop shipping outfit. They actually are a legitimate company roasting legitimate beans for your consuming pleasure. And if you use our code podcast grunts, you do get 10% off. So you get a discount on the purchase. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win. And it's not charity because you get to drink glorious coffee while you're doing it. Nick, so what is your summertime, as summer winds down, what is your summertime beverage of choice?
Right now, I'm really into the bubblies.
Okay.
So there's a Benini bubbly flavor that they came out with. Put that over some ice and you're good to go.
Okay. What about you, Michael? What of your summer drinking? Have you just kept it the same as always?
I'm a little shocked at a panini flavored bubbly water, but Diet Pepsi has always been my muse.
Okay, we'll take that. For me, it's Diet Coke, water, or iced coffees. I have fallen in love with the iced coffee. I have been officially converted. And if you go with the cold brew, it's not that many calories. A little bit of cream, a little bit of French vanilla. And it's less than what I used to drink for more ounces of it. So I'm calling it a win. And I have not announced it here, dear listener, but I have talked about it on other social media. But it is official. I have lost enough weight. I can shop at Walmart again. So no more big and tall store for me. I went from $60 for a T-shirt to $20 at Walmart, and I'm like, I'm here for it. And everyone else is complaining Walmart got more expensive, and I'm like, for me, it's cheaper than the Fat Man store.
Just saved you $40 on shirts, bro.
Right? All I had to do was give up eating.
Yeah.
Dieting's easy, blind. You can't find the food anyway.
I don't want to give up my vision just to lose another few pounds. I'll take the slow approach if I have to. So how do you manage to cook then?
Well, there's as with everything that I've learned from being blind, it's about asking the right question. Very, very, very bright military flashlights or headbands. I've got gloves I've got chainmail gloves for cutting up stuff. I've got gloves that allow me to pick meat directly off a barbecue grill. Before that, there were lots of cuts and lots of burns. And I still have issues with, like, I learned to cook from a gourmet chef, so I like to flip the stuff in the pan. I can't do that anymore. Well, I can, but it makes a great big mess. And so I actually have to use utensils. I have to be very careful about the edges of pans. Like with the editing, everything is slower. Is really what it amounts to.
So you keep it simple now.
I don't get to do the fancy stuff. I have to overcook any meat that I'm browning just to make sure it is brown, which is sadness, but
Okay. Well, with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And because this is the Blasters and Blades podcast, discussions of booze, beer, food, and coffee will be involved because we just can't help ourselves.
That's true.
But only the best for us, Nick, because we've got taste now.
We do.
All right, and with that, we are
Sophisticated
out.
palates.